Mr Speaker, I initially was going to make a relatively brief speech on this bill in support of it, but there've been a number of comments that have been made which have frankly given me a few concerns about the bill. And I want to say that probably of all of the members in the House, I would be amongst the two or three who know the park the best. I've spent quite a bit of. I've certainly been there many times on occasion with children, and often on Anzac Day. In fact, it was a place where we marched in Hamilton for Anzac Day. It was always interesting. We started on the west and marched to the east. We always broke time going over the bridge in order not to shake it too much. There was some anxiety about whether it would fall down if we did, and then went back into time again when the team was over the bridge and there. And I remember to this day the messages that were given by the Reverend Clark, who used to do. He was the parson for the RSA, and he didn't sort of hang back. He wasn't someone who was forever promoting peace. He didn't talk a lot about peacekeeping, but his line was, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Blessed are the peacemakers, and sir, it made quite an impression on me. I remember in particular, as some members might, getting some urgent messages as I was leaving the Anzac Day service at Parana Park, or we used to know it as the Anzac Memorial, actually, on those days rather than Parana Park, because that was the day that the then Prime Minister had made some comments on the east coast of the United States as to New Zealand's relationship. Which at the time seemed quite important, and one or two of his colleagues weren't particularly, especially Dr. Bassett, weren't particularly pleased about. But so one of the questions I've got of the member in his reply goes to something which has only recently occurred to me, because I hear he is going to fix in stone, and that's effectively no, not the names of the councillors, the name Parana itself. It is. I want to ask the member the origin of it. I know that there's a Parana River in Argentina. I think it's the biggest river in Argentina, and I wonder whether it's an A, not an I. Yeah, that's right. The member might be a biting fish, but Parana is, I understand, the largest river in Argentina. Now, I'm digging way back into my geography, and I wonder whether George Parr had some relationship with Argentina, whether he'd visited, whether his family had visited on the way, and that was the reason that it was named that. And because, and I do say to this, thank you to my colleague Sumaroni for highlighting to me the fact that we are putting into legislation the Parana and effectively putting it into stone, Mr. Speaker, because I do have some anxiety about that. I mean, what happens if, for example, the New Zealand Geographic Board, after proper application by the Tangata Whenua from Kirikiriroa, actually decide to give it again the name which it was also known as, and that is Putikitiki. That area around the creek and the area slightly north is known as Putikitiki. And why are we saying here that it should be known as Parana and not Putikitiki? Is that an appropriate thing for legislation to do? No, Putikitiki is the name of the area immediately around the Anzac Memorial. And it's been known that way for quite a long time. It was certainly used by the elders when we've met there on occasions. And I just wonder why, if we are legislating, for the first time, this name into the records of Parliament and saying effectively it cannot be changed, why we are not
giving an alternative use as part...
Because Hamilton Council presented the bill, and it was the name of the bill that they...
Okay, well, it's fine to say that Hamilton Council presented it in this form, but we are Parliament. We are Parliament. We make the decisions as to what legislation we pass and the name. Now, the member might think he's still a city councillor, no, or a, what was it, a district councillor, or a county councillor, that's right. He thinks he's still a county councillor, but now he is a parliamentarian. Now he is a parliamentarian, and we do not. You know, it may be that the people in the Hamilton City Council are okay, but they do not dictate to us what we pass. They do not. They've got a right. They've got a right to make a suggestion. They've got a right to make. But to say to that member, we are a mere rubber stamp for any county council that comes along. Well, I just don't understand why the National Party is prepared to give up the sovereignty of this Parliament to every county council that wants to wander along. And I asked Georgina Tahue to actually have a think about it and ask whether, as the Associate Minister of Maori Affairs, she was consulted on this. On the shifting of the name and legislation away from. Remember what? Yes.
The answer is that this followed the normal legislative pattern. We call for public submission to no submission.
Okay. What the member says is he will only make legislation better if someone suggests it to him, and he won't think for himself. And he will not think for himself. A chair of a select committee who tells us, he is an unthinking rubber stamp for legislation. No wonder the people of the West Coast are saying, keep him in Wellington, get him high on the list. We don't want him coming back here. What? Well, he's got a sports car, Wellington, but sir, I think it's fair to say for the 6 months before the sports car was parked downstairs, the Queen Street trailer, the Queen Street tractor was parked downstairs here. That member very, very rarely focuses on the West Coast and doesn't listen to people. That's
because he's never there.
From down there. Well, we can tell from the location of vehicles. Whereas, Mr. Chairman, I do want to go back and say this is a park that I do know relatively well. I will visit it. I looked at Parana Park. I examined it from a bar across the river relatively recently, and I thought, well, that's Parana. That's Parana Park. That's Parana Park. I remembered, sir, and there was evidence every now and again on Anzac Day. It was often used late at night for activities which weren't, sir, what you described as ideal activities for children. And unfortunately, many of them left the evidence. And the point we got to in the end, sir, was that the council used to do a sweep around the park before Anzac Day to make sure that the evidence of the night before's activities were not left on the ground in the way that it had been on a number of occasions. Mr. Speaker, we are prepared to support this legislation at this stage, but I think it's important that my successor in Hamilton West, whose name I've lost, what's his name?
McIntyre.
Yeah, Mr. McIntyre. It's important that Mr. McIntyre inform Mr. Bennett, whose name I do remember, that support is not guaranteed for this legislation at its later stages, because we are concerned that as part of this we're putting into concrete a name which the tangata whenua have not indicated that they support. We want to know. We want to know what the Kingitanga think of this. We want to know what the Kingitanga think of this, Mr. Speaker, because there is a danger that we're about to promote an evil in this legislation.